Good evening, everyone. Oh, that's what I like. Good evening. Welcome. So I'm Abby Yeoman. I'm I can't say new anymore. It's almost been a year, but Director and Chief Executive of the Kansas City Public Library. Okay. This is the kind of crowd I like, so keep it up. Thank you so much for being here tonight as we celebrate Pride Month at the library. So let's do it. So I'm just going to own, I am over 40 now, so I have to have big font. So if you see me moving this around, I apologize. So before we dive into this evening's program, I want to take just a moment to share a few exciting things coming up at the library this summer. You won't want to miss them. So first up, who has signed up for summer reading? Yeah. Let's go, adults. We can sign up for summer reading, right? And model that for our kids. So summer reading is on. This year's theme is Color Our World, and we're inviting readers of all ages to explore vivid stories, bold ideas, and read 5 great books. Between now and August 15th, you can sign up online or in person, including at the bookmobile or at one of our pop-in at the park stops. Plus, you'll earn fun prizes like, okay, listen, I'm still a little upset that I came too late last year and didn't get the pint glass. So you can win a pint glass. These are very popular. Making sure I'm showing it the right way. Pint glass, we have totes, and we also have really cute little snack cups for the kids. I thought those were cool. So, and yes, snacks absolutely count as motivation. That is important. So also, mark your calendar for Friday, June 20th, which is next week already. Holy smokes. We're kicking off our off-the-wall rooftops film series with Pretty in Pink. Who's the 80s kids out there? Anybody? Yeah, Pretty in Pink. Here we go. Join us at Central Library for a night under the stars, complete with skyline views and great vibes. It's totally free, and this year's theme, just like our reading program, is all about joy and color. And if you love a good untold story, don't miss Liberating Lawrence, go Jayhawks, brings to life the LGBTQ+ student movement that made waves in Kansas back in the 70s with national attention and legal drama to boot. There's always got to be some legal drama. That's coming soon, and it's one of the many programs helping us spotlight powerful voices in local history. So again, that's coming up on June 25th. Then on June 26th, we're going deep into Kansas City's smoky, saucy past. I think this is for my husband. With Up in Smoke, a special evening exploring the legacy of Henry Perry and the city's barbecue dynasty. Emmy-nominated journalist Jamie, I think it's Weiss, I want to make sure I get that right, Jamie Weiss, will host, and joined by local experts, and Perry's granddaughter will be on stage to share family stories. This one is going to be a flavorful in every sense. I love that. Looking ahead to July, we're celebrating a true Kansas City icon. I'm really excited about this because I didn't get to do this last year. So Lucille Bluford, if you know our Bluford Library branch, right? So on July 1st, please join us at our Bluford branch for Lucille Bluford Day. A full day of family fun, music, storytelling, a keynote by her nephew John Bluford III, who will reflect on her legacy and what it means. And I also got confirmation today that Jason Joseph will join us from the call as well. So we're going to have a great lineup, lots of fun. So join us for that on July 1st. And then, let's see, and if you want a program, I was reminded to tell you they'll have them around if you want to pick one of those up. So whatever your summer holds for you, books, films, food, inspiration, we've got something for you at the library. Pick up a program on your way out or visit kclibrary.org to find your next great event. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce the person that's going to kick off our conversation. I'm pleased to introduce the president of Kansas City Public Library's Board of Trustees. He is an incredible human being, number one, an incredible supporter, and a champion of both the library, and he definitely walks the walk when we talk about supporting the Kansas City community. So please join me in welcoming Pete Brown.
Thank you. This is the program Abby had mentioned. You can get them upstairs. Thank you, Abby, for that list of so many incredible items coming up. This is definitely the place to be. Good evening, welcome. As Abby mentioned, I'm Pete Brown, president of the Kansas City Public Library Board of Trustees. And it's a pleasure to see so many of you here tonight and also to welcome those of you joining via the live stream. So we're glad you're all here, or wherever you may be watching us from. I consider the Kansas City Public Library a critical infrastructure for an informed and engaged community. Amen. And I'm proud to serve alongside a staff of professionals here as they open the doors each and every day with opportunities to connect and inspire patrons from all across our region. Tonight's signature speaker series event is one of those moments that really reminds us what the library is all about. Bringing people together for powerful stories, thoughtful conversations, and a deeper understanding of the world and each other. We're incredibly honored to welcome our featured guest this evening, Jonathan Capehart, a Pulitzer Prize. Yes. A Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, an MSNBC anchor, a columnist and associate editor for the Washington Post, has a segment on PBS NewsHour each week with Dave Brooks, and is one of the most compelling voices in national media today. Yes. His new book, Yes, Yet Here I Am, Lessons from a Black Man's Search for Home, is deeply personal and moving, chronicling his journey of identity, belonging, and resilience as a gay black man growing up and building an award-winning career in the world of journalism. Personally, I'm a huge admirer of Mr. Capehart's work, both in the Washington Post and his work on the NewsHour, and I was excited to receive a response to my inquiry of him to include the Kansas City Public Library as a stop on his book tour. Growing up in New Jersey, Mr. Capehart wanted to be a journalist since he was 10 years old. His younger self called it a news commentator, and he said that at that age he was, quote, fascinated that people had jobs telling other people's business. In 1982, when Bryant Gumbel replaced Tom Brokaw on the Today Show, it was then that he saw someone who looked like him in a career that he aspired to work in. So after graduating from Carleton College in Northfield, Minnesota, he set about to do just that, building a career in journalism, and in this beautiful memoir, you will learn more about his life and his career. At the end of 2020, NBC announced that Mr. Capehart would anchor a new show, the Sunday show on MSNBC. That next week, he closed his current show at that time with a beautiful piece thanking NBC and his family and acknowledging two important people in his life, his mom, Margaret Kindred Capehart, and his uncle, McKinley Branch, thanking them for the pivotal roles they played in helping him get where he wanted to be. Mr. Capehart's story really resonated with me because I give similar credit to my mom and to an uncle who has inspired and guided me and opened doors in my career. And we share the same love of family and that deep dedication to our callings. So I'm inspired by Mr. Capehart's commitment to the noble cause of journalism and storytelling, and I appreciate him being a light in these challenging times. Henry Louis Gates Jr. said of this book, he said, quote, Capehart grounds us in stories of curiosity meeting excellence. And that describes how I felt reading Yet Here I Am, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from Mr. Capehart this evening. Now, helping guide this conversation is someone that many of you already know and love, our moderator for this evening, Paul Nyakatura. A Kansas City, Kansas native, Paul is probably best known for his smooth signature voice on KCUR Public Radio 89.3. And before that, from his time on Hot 103 Jams. So who's a KCUR and Paul Nyakatura fan? I am. I'm right there with you. Now, Paul got his start in radio after winning a stand-up comedy competition in Manhattan, Kansas. And it turns out the mic suited him well So in addition to his career at KCUR, he's also a beloved part of Kansas City's music scene as one half of the hip-hop duo Face Face. Paul will lead the conversation tonight, and after that, we'll open the floor for your questions. For those joining online, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to as many of them as we can. We also want to give a big thank you to our partners at Rainy Day Books, who are here tonight selling copies of Yet Here I Am. And Jonathan will be signing books immediately following the program right here on this stage, so be sure to stick around. And now, please join me in welcoming to the Kansas City Public Library, Jonathan Capehart and Paul Nyakatura. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I haven't even said anything yet.
I mean, if they just want to keep clapping while we stand here, that's
great.
Awesome.
Wow.
Oh, man. I already put my clipboard down.
A friend told me, many friends who have done book tours have told me to be sure to soak it all in, really enjoy it, the book tour. So that's why I'm doing all sorts of unprofessional things like taking pictures and videos.
You gotta put your hands up like you guys are at the Uptown. Yeah!
Hold on. Got it.
The library crowd is live. I love it.
Gorgeous. You look gorgeous.
Yes, wonderful people. Thank you all for being here, Kansas City. And thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm Paul Nyakatura. Middays at KCUR, and I guess I gotta open it with a what's good.
What's good?
Yeah, I have a little bit of a catchphrase.
Okay, so what's good?
Yeah.
What's good, despite the insanity that is swirling all around us, whether you're paying attention to things or not. Seriously.
It's from some people's jobs.
You know what's good? It's been great traveling around the country, meeting people, talking to people who have either read the book or are excited to read the book, and just hearing what they think about what's going on. And despite the insanity that's happening, I still find little pockets of hope. Like, people haven't given up, and that's the thing that I find. That's what's good, Paul.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, the book, want to get right into it. You draw
Hello?
lines throughout the...
Hello? Someone's phone was ringing.
It's
just wanted to
clearly
answer
important.
For them. Oh, wait, that's not a mirror. Oh, wow, that's actually people of that. Hello.
Yeah, no. Oh, you don't know.
Oh, my God.
So this got announced, and like normal, a big event, they bring people here to the Plaza Branch, but for you, they had to open overflow because you are so popular here.
Oh, wow, that's what's good.
That's what you have in here. Kansas City loves you, man. What do we?
No, I see that at every book tour stop, there has been a surprise during the book signing, and I'm not sure, but I thought I saw someone out in the audience I have not seen in a while.
Do we want to shout him out?
No, because I don't know if it's him. Come on, Paul.
I hope it's them. Like, you don't recognize me? But throughout the book, you draw a lot of through lines through the past. As mentioned in the intro, you really liked getting into your family's mess and their business.
Yeah. I was what they called a tattletale.
A snitch?
No. I guess that would be today's parlance.
Sorry.
But back then, I was a
group chat.
tattletale, where I would tell everybody's business, including one day, one of my uncles came during the summers down south. One of my uncles came to visit, and he had annoyed me in some particular way. And so I decided to write a letter to my aunt to inform her that he had come to visit, but he had brought a guest.
Wait, how old were you?
I was too young to know better, but I think I was
You knew real well.
Yeah, I was about 6-ish. I wrote the letter, "Dear Aunt so-and-so, hi, how are you? I am fine. Uncle so-and-so came to visit. He brought a pretty woman with him. Okay, have a nice day." Yeah, so when Grandma, I'll never forget, and I asked my grandmother for a stamp. I signed, I addressed the envelope, I put the stamp, I walked downtown to mail it at the post office.
You mailed this?
There was no internet.
You couldn't just walk it down to...
No, I mailed the letter because I was in North Carolina, she was in New York.
Oh, long distance business. I love it.
Yeah, and so 2 days later, the phone rings, and I hear Grandma saying, "Oh, hi, how are you?" "Oh, what? Okay, bye-bye." Boom, 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 boom. Door flies open, and my career as a family tattletale came to an abrupt and painful end.
Okay, just so that formative experience.
Painful end.
Did that cause you to, like, when you were writing this book, were the formative experiences, like, did you see them as a through line, or when you went to write the book, was it a different reflection that you were looking at?
Maybe, it wasn't until, so I knew that being the family tattletale had to have been my entree into news, simply because when I started watching the Today Show, because my Uncle McKinley said, and my Uncle McKinley worked at NBC, he was an electrician, and so he was going to work, and he said, "Turn on the Today Show, they're doing their show on the plaza, I'm gonna try to find where the cameras are, and I'm gonna wave." So I start watching this show, and that was when I discovered, oh wait, they're telling other people's, this is a job? You can do this? And so that is what sparked this thing. So I started watching the Today Show, and yeah, I wanted to be a news commentator, but a lot of the things that I can see now were sort of the precursors to being a reporter. I only saw them as I was putting together this book and pushing all these vignettes that I had in my head for so long, and finally started putting down to pixels in 2017. It wasn't until then that I started to see through lines and commonalities.
So, I'm sorry, you're just saying you got it, because I know you had a long time before you got to news journalism, to actual TV journalism, and I knew
Right.
that was the ultimate goal. You just said 2017 was when you first debuted?
No, 2017 is when I first got the stories out of my head and down. Down into pixels.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. I'd been doing TV by then for a long time.
Gotcha. Okay, I was very confused. Excuse me. Moving forward, it's Pride Month, and no claps for Pride Month? Where are we at? It's Pride Month. That was a celebratory thank you. No. All right.
All right, since you said Pride Month, okay, the person waving the pride flag, is your name Rob? So it's not him.
It's not him.
Okay, I just want to make sure. But you look so much like an old college friend of mine.
Hey, not Rob. Next time, lie and be cool. There's a provocative title, or a provocative chapter title in the book.
Which one? There are two that I can imagine. There's the one that's bleeped out because it's two expletives. I don't think that's the one you're talking about.
No.
It's how many of you have read the book already?
Wow.
So
it just came out. My reading comprehension is awful.
Well, so when I say chapter 8, you remember what chapter 8 was? That chapter 8's title is Hide Your Porn Well.
Yeah.
It's a fabulous story.
The man's good at headlines.
A story. We don't. I mean, I could read it, but it might be a little too risque.
Please.
For the people
Peer pressure.
For the people who have read chapter 8, should I read it or not? So it's a no.
Yeah.
So it's a no.
Whoa,
No. There were a loud.
It's a
no's.
democracy.
There's a loud no's. But what? Oh, yeah, no. It's a no. No, she this is like the security.
That's a black grandmother. Did you see me not press it after that?
Right. So she is like the United States at the Security Council. She's like,
I said
no.
it was a democracy. It's
No.
clearly a dictatorship. I had no idea.
No. I'll read something else in a little bit. Go on, Paul.
Well, because I don't know if I'm gonna like push you to what you want to. Do you know what do you? What do you want to share?
But you started on This Is Pride Month, and there's a chapter with a provocative title. So where were you going with this?
I mean, I could read my friend's question, but like, real quick, this one just to not spoil anything. What media were we talking about that was found? Like, are we talking VHS or like magazines? Because you've been in TV for so long.
No. In terms of the subject matter of what needed to
media.
be hidden well.
Mm-hmm. I'm just asking media.
Magazines. Again, this was in the before times.
Just for posterity, can I get a title of a magazine?
No. The Security Council says no.
We're not reading it. Fine.
No,
Fine.
no.
Well,
Next line of questioning, counselor.
Okay. Because you talk about coming out being something that has to be a constant, because it's like being black. Like unlike being black, it's not a thing people see, but it's a thing that you have to live every day.
Right.
So that you talk about that approaching that vulnerability and I wanted to know, like, because you're on TV, I personally have a parasocial relationship with a few people, but it's not as serious as yours. It's not to the extreme level as yours, and so I wanted to know, like, how do you go about, and what do you go about sharing about your life and keeping yourself and like through a day-to-day, because people can see you and think they know you. You have a full book about
right.
that, but they still won't. So
right. What's been hilarious in my career pre-book coming out, and I've come out so many times in columns and on television that, and just by saying simple things like, oh, well, we were visiting my in-laws and my husband's family does this, and just a natural thing to say. And then I would hear from LGBT folks around the country saying, oh my God, that was so wonderful that you did that, and to be able to see you do that and just have it be so natural. And this is all that we've been wanting and fighting for. And then there would be the people who would write and say, I had no idea. And I'm like, did you blink? What? How did you not know? So that is one regard in which coming out is a constant. But what I mean by that, and there are various points in the book where, as LGBTQ folks, we pick and choose when it's time to come out. And just because we've come out to family or come out to coworkers, if we move, we have to decide whether we're going to come out. If we change jobs, we have to decide whether we're going to come out. If we want to be our full selves in whatever we're doing, work, philanthropic work, other things that are in our lives, we have to decide whether we want to put that out there for people to know. When I was at the Daily News early in my career, I was writing editorials and then columns about, and this is early 1990s in New York, and I was writing a bunch of editorials about unsafe sex happening in movie theaters in New York City, and Rudy Giuliani, who was the mayor then, was shutting them down. And the editorial policy of the Daily News was in support of the mayor. And so I'm writing these editorials, and my editor, quintessential straight guy, lovely, lovely man. So, and as I write in the books, he was like a mix of Ed Harris and Steve McQueen. So very easy on the eyes, but just an incredibly smart man, a journalist. And so we were sitting, it was sort of deadline time, and he's sitting in a chair almost like this, and I'm at the desk, and he's peppering me with these questions. Why don't the younger gay men listen to the older gay men? Why don't they learn from their elders? I don't understand why this is happening. And I sat there and I was sort of quiet, and it was then I'm wrestling. Do I come out to him? Do I tell him? Mind you, this is my third job out of college. And when I came out to my mother, I'll get to that in a moment, the first thing she told me was, don't tell anybody. And so now here I am being confronted. And so I just said, Arthur, you know I'm gay, right? And, he was in the chair and he was slumped like this, and he goes, Did I know for a fact? No. Did I suspect? Absolutely. And we both laughed, and then I proceeded to answer his questions. And I proceeded to answer his questions in ways that made my reporting more clear, my writing more clear for him. And so by coming out to him, by coming out to my editor, in addition to saying, like, hey, I'm gay, I also revealed myself to be someone who knows what he's talking about because he's in this community. And so that's why, one, it's important for people to come out. Two, while at the same time, it is important to understand that coming out is a personal journey. I never begrudge anybody who takes their time getting to the point where they feel personally comfortable to tell the world, however they define it, who they are. And that's why also it is an inherently political act. Because once you do that, you could be putting your life in danger, your livelihood in danger, your home, your family, still. Now, when I came out to my mother in 1990, when we moved back to Hazlitt after my mother divorced my then stepfather, I came back from Carleton. Carleton is a lovely, small liberal arts college in Minnesota, and so I came back full of, I'm down for the cause and the people, and so my mom, she did not like the fact that I was correcting some of the things she was saying, and so she got really mad at me and yelled and said, ever since you came back from college, you've come back so liberal. And I said, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. And then I decided, okay, now's the time. I'm going to maneuver the conversation in such a way that my mother is forced to ask me, am I gay? Not that I'm going to say, hey, Mom, you know what? No, she has to ask me, because then I have to respond. And so she did. She asked me. And I said, yes. And then the first thing she said to me was, don't tell anyone. Now, by looking at the audience...
Was she scared for you?
Well, yeah. This was 19...
But was it don't tell anyone, I don't want anyone to know outside of this household, or was it like, you're my baby, I can't let them get to you?
Well, I mean, it was the latter, but the next thing she said was, don't tell anyone, it'll ruin your career. So I was about to say, there are a lot of people here I can see who were around in 1990.
I was rude.
No, but
I was 3.
I'm sorry, you were 3 years old in 1990. Child, please. I'm talking about people who were sentient adults in 1990. You remember what America was like for the LGBTQ community. While then as now, you can still be fired from your job, you could still lose your home if you, and just for shorthand, if you're gay or lesbian. But culturally, the country was in a completely different space. There was no Will and Grace. There was no RuPaul. There was no RuPaul's Drag Race, RuPaul's Drag All-Stars, RuPaul, there was none of that. None of that. And so anybody in any profession who was gay, when I finally moved to New York City, I met lawyers, bankers, teachers, other journalists who were professionally closeted. Today, we've got, and this is wonderful, we've got kids coming out at 8, 9, 10. And why is that possible? Because culturally, the country is in a much better place than it was 30-something years ago. And I want to be clear about something. I am not denying that things are still bad. I mean, the trans community has a rhetorical and metaphorical target on its back, from children to adults to members of the military. But at the same time, there are more people in the country who know someone LGBTQ today than 30 years ago, and are willing to acknowledge that. And so, you mentioned this is Pride Month, and this is a rough Pride Month because of all the things that are happening, but it is much better than it was when I was sitting, cross-legged on my futon with my mother staring at me, telling me not to tell anyone. Also, I told her, Mom, come on. It's like I have a giant neon sign over my head that screams gay. And I told her, Mom, I'm not going to run out there and tell everybody, but if somebody asks me the question, I'm going to answer the question. And that has nothing to do with taking a political stance, and it has everything to do with the way my mother raised me to tell the truth.
Shout out to moms. I think, is mine in here? If she's here, she showed up late. I love her, though.
Whose mother? Your mother?
Mm-hmm. She told me she would be here. I don't hear her, though, so. Shifting gears a little bit, we are here at the Kansas City Public Library. Shout out to the Plaza branch. And I'm just going to come out with it other than you, because, of course, this should be on everybody's TBR. What's on yours?
On my DVR.
TBR, to be reading.
Oh, to be reading. I'm sorry. I'm in my little bubble over here. To be reading, as in
Of course,
books.
we have Yet Here I Am to be reading.
Yes, to be reading. Thank you. Well, right now I am reading, I'm forgetting her first name. She's a staff writer at The New Yorker. She wrote the biography of Lorne Michaels.
Oh.
It is fascinating. It is an incredible book, and what it does is it shows you the history of SNL and how and Lorne Michaels' trajectory, while at the same time showing you how SNL is made every week. And so it starts Monday with the show and the guest host and what happens, the mechanics. And then the second half of the chapter is Lorne Michaels was born such and such and such, and here are his parents. And so you see in tandem the creation of the show and the creation of Lorne Michaels. So that's what I am reading now. But what I will say is, people have said to me, especially the folks who have read the book, wow, you're so raw, you're so honest, you're so revealing. Why did you feel you had to do that? And I take them back to two books that I read, more than 20 years ago. The first one was in about 1990, 2000, book called Personal History by Katharine Graham. Katharine Graham, as judging by the sounds for the audience, you know who she was, the most powerful woman in American journalism and one of the most powerful women in the country. And yet in her memoir, she was, for a woman of her stature, to be so open and honest and raw and introspective about her fraught relationship with her mother, with her insecurities about running the Washington Post after her husband died, after he committed suicide. So there's that. Then she had to run this institution. Then she went to battle with Nixon. Then there's the Pentagon Papers, Watergate. I mean, and yet here she is being so revealing. And I mean, I loved that book for the story it told, but who was telling it and how she was telling it. Fast forward 20 years, another TBR, is Charles Blow's Fire Shut Up in My Bones. Another revealing, raw, honest memoir that informed, at least for me, told me where all the passion behind Charles's columns for the New York Times, where it came from. It finally, I mean, he's a phenomenal writer, but now there was grounding. So when it came time for me to write my book, there was no other way I could write this book, having those two books as the foundation for me. And so, again, to be open and honest and raw, people think they know me. Folks who have read the book, now you really know me. And that's been the fun part of writing the book, but that also, to me, is sort of the joy of reading. The bits and pieces of things that you pull along the way, and then figure out how to use them for your own devices.
Real quick before we get to the audience questions, there were mantras throughout the book.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a favorite?
One of my favorite mantras isn't in the book. I couldn't figure out how to work it in there, and that was sometimes cheap is too expensive. But there was no chapter
please.
I could.
I'm the one that needs to hear this because I suck at maintenance, and I do cheap things to begin with, and then it just costs so much more over time.
Well, then you know. Stop being cheap, Paul. This little piece of it, this little mantra of mine came up when a friend of mine bought some really cheap shoes. And then they wore, Paul?
It's the only thing I spend money on. This is the only thing in my intro that they didn't mention was my sneakers.
Okay, good. So he buys these shoes, and then there's a hole in them in just like a month. And I said, listen, if you spend, at the time, $300 on the Ferragamos, they're beautiful shoes, and if you don't wear them into the ground, you will have them for decades. Well, he bought the Ferragamos, proceeded to wear them into the ground, but that's the one. But I have three. Originally, the book was meant to be lessons, structured around lessons, and then we just turned it into regular narrative. But the first lesson is, or mantra is, when someone asks you what you want, tell them. And so the story behind that, there are two stories behind that. The first one is how I got my first internship on the Today Show. I had my Carleton College interview in New York. 30 Rock is just a few doors down from the New York Hilton. So I called my Uncle McKinley and said, hey, I'm just up the street, can I come visit? He said, sure. Get to him, he says, I have work to do in the nightly news office, do you want to come? Exactly, rhetorical question. Hell yeah, I want to go. I'm going to meet Brokaw and Chancellor and Utley and Irving R. Levine and all these folks. And I get there and there's nobody there, it's 9 in the morning. But there is one woman sitting at a desk. She's eating a bagel, drinking coffee, reading one of the tabloids, and I'm sitting on a sofa facing her, and I'm sure burning holes in her skin as I'm trying to work up the courage to talk to her. I was about 15, 16 years old. And so I finally worked up the courage. I asked her her name. Her name's Ann Skakel-Tarian, and she worked on nightly news. And so, you see a little kid sitting in front of you. You ask, so what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, well, I want to be Moscow correspondent, and then I'm trying to decide between going to the London Bureau or to the White House. But if I go to the London Bureau, then I definitely then want to go to the White House, and then after that, I want to come to New York and be anchor of the Today Show. Yeah, she had the same look. I'm sure she had the same look on her face as you do right now. Who is this child? We talk a little bit more. My uncle comes back, and he says it's time to go. I thank her for her time in answering my questions, and she says, wait a minute. She opened the drawer, pulled out an NBC notepad, wrote down the name Kay Bradley and her phone number. This was before the internet. And she ripped it off and said, here, get yourself an internship on the Today Show.
Go.
And that started the path that I'm on. The second story is, so now I'm a big-time journalist. We just won the Pulitzer Prize. The myth is you win the Pulitzer, your phone blows up with job offers, and that wasn't true for me. And so I started talking to people about, I love the daily news and the hyper-local New York City, New York focus, but maybe I would like to go to the national stage. And one friend kept saying, you need to go to Bloomberg. You should talk to Bloomberg. And I really kept putting this person off because Bloomberg is financial news. Again, this is 2000. And finally I relent and go to have a meeting with the head of Bloomberg News. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong that morning. Wrong suit, couldn't find a cab, downpouring rain, had to get on the subway, then had to walk in the rain to 59th and Park. By the time I got off the elevator, I was completely soaked, so soaked that my shoes squeaked.
Not the Ferragamos.
No, they weren't Ferragamos by then. But shoes squeaked, and there's Matt Winkler at the end of the hall. And he gives me a tour of Bloomberg, shows me everything, and at the end basically does a ta-da, so what do you think? And I said, about what? And he said, about coming to work here. And I was like, whoa, this is supposed to be an informational interview. This is my internal dialogue. I didn't say this out loud. And I said, well, I don't think this would be a good fit. And he said, well, why? I said, this is financial news. I don't write about financial news. I write about politics. And so he got mad. At least that was my impression, because he said, well, what do you want to do? And then leaned back in his chair and folded his arms and stared at me. And a bow tie, too, so it was real intense. And stared at me. And then here I'm thinking, I have a job I love. I have colleagues that I love. I don't want to work here. I've got nothing to lose. So I looked him in the eye, square in the eye, and I said, I want to write a column once a week and go on television and talk about it like I do right now. And then I leaned back, folded my arms. Because again, I had nothing to lose. And then there's a beat, and he says, well, why can't you do that here? And then proceeds to give me the same tour, this time revealing that they had just started an opinion section, had hired 2 people to do a radio show and other things, and that I would be perfect. I got so freaked out. I was like, oh, look at the time. I got to get out of here. Our meeting is about to start. I ran out of there as fast as I could. That speaks to self-sabotage, which is a whole other conversation. By the end of that week, I had a brand new job as national affairs columnist at Bloomberg News and, a nice salary to go with it. But he asked me what I wanted. I told him. The second mantra is go where your talents are wanted. And so when I was at the Washington Post, I was writing columns, but I was also doing podcasts, doing live events around the world, subbing on the radio at WNYC, and basically just going wherever. Which leads to the third mantra, which is everything we do in life is an audition for something else. We just don't know what for yet. And so that didn't hit me until I was writing the book, and then I realized that all the column writing, all the podcast interviews, all the live events that I was doing, all the guest hosting on the radio, which seemed like disparate activities, all sort of journalism related, but I put them all together when it came time to audition for the show that I have now.
That's awesome.
And so, but I didn't realize it at the time. And so I urge everyone here, particularly the young people, to keep in mind that just because you might not be doing the thing that you think you should be doing or that you have veered off your path, that somehow you are perpetually lost. What it could mean is you're gaining experience in something that will come to you and be a benefit to you down the road. You can't see it right now, but eventually you will, especially if you don't self-sabotage. And that is something where you laugh, but that's why I ran out of the room. It's like, wait, you actually are going to give me what I want? A lot of people can't handle being given what they asked for, what they worked for. And so if you are a self-sabotager, cut it out. Accept your blessings. Take them. Snatch them.
Well, that is going. We got to get to these audience questions.
Okay.
You did, yeah.
What time is it? We just got started.
That's how I feel.
Paul, we just sat down 10 minutes ago. How could it possibly be time?
You're good at what you do. You're fun to talk to. All right, so we have microphones at either side of the aisle, on either aisle. So please make your way down if you have a question, please, sir. And make sure you speak close into the microphone and loud enough for everyone to hear.
What's your name, sir? Yeah. My name is Blaine Stevens.
Hi, Blaine.
And I've read the book, Jonathan. It was very inspiring. And one of the inspiring parts of it was in chapter 10, where you discussed a 2-year campaign to resurrect the Apollo from its dismal existence at that time. And it taught me the lesson of what you said, how to show respect to your elders, but sometimes you got to rub up against them to get the objective that you're after. Could you reflect a little bit on that beyond what you had in the book, if you want?
So when we did the series of editorials on the Apollo Theater, it came about because Mayor Giuliani and then Congressman Charlie Rangel, the late Congressman Charlie Rangel, were in a fight over empowerment zone money for Harlem and some that he wanted to go to the Apollo. We used any and every excuse to get out of the office at the Daily News and get around the city and actually see things. So we went up to the Apollo and I watched Showtime at the Apollo, which used to come on after Saturday Night Live every week, and the theater looked fabulous. On television, when you got into the theater, paint chipping from the ceilings, the rugs were torn up, the chairs were broken and dirty, and so we started asking questions. And in the asking questions, my writing partner, Michael Aronson, and we divided and conquered. He eyeballed all the contracts and all the legal papers, and I set about spending as much time in Harlem as I could to just understand the relationships. And I knew that, already we were at a deficit because folks in Harlem had a very jaundiced view of the Daily News. And I figured that at least I could meet people halfway. what I learned was, and talk about, the things that you learn early on, all those summers I spent with my grandparents down in North Carolina, all the shuttling to see my father's side of the family and being introduced to people, and the customs and the mores of just the South, but also of African Americans. You never call a black person who you did not grow up with or know as family by their first name. You had to, right, the veto. You had to put a miss or a mister. And so I employed all of that when I was up in Harlem. And in doing so, I had people who were not willing to talk to me at all. But they all knew who I was talking to. It was a woman on the board named Evelyn Cunningham, who was a longtime famous journalist, former, in the black press. She used to work for the Pittsburgh Courier. She covered the civil rights movement in real time, got cussed out by Bull Connor when she tried to interview him, and she became like a third reporter on the story, but she was also a board member. And so other board members would not talk to me, but they would talk to her, knowing full well she was talking to me. And why would they do that? Because they didn't want to go up against the Harlem power structure. They didn't want to have to go up against someone else in the community. But here I am, a black reporter, going up against the establishment in Harlem, and that didn't go over well. I was called every name in the book, every horrible name. But again, my job was about shining a light on the Apollo, trying to do whatever we could to save the Apollo Theater. And the Apollo Theater, I think just last year, when Biden was president, was given an honorary Kennedy Center honor. The theater is more than back. I mean, we're talking more than 25 years ago when we did this. And the theater is up and running and thriving. And so you can read all about it in chapter 10. Sorry to go on so long, but.
Thank you. Sir, your name and question?
Good evening. I'm Obi McNair. Thank you again so much, Jonathan. I look forward to listening to your book on Audible.
I read it, so you'll hear me.
Hey.
Better. As a fellow black gay man, I always tell people that I hear so many stories about a love-hate relationship, particularly with the church. I often say to people, yes, there were times where I felt like I got the most pain, but it also cultivated me into who I am today. I'm curious to hear a little bit about your experience in church and kind of how it shaped you, not only professionally, but also just personally as well.
That's a whole chapter.
That is a great question. So I'm basically like a religious mutt, meaning I went to Catholic school, 1st through 4th grade,
gang.
and then the last 2 years of high school at St. Benedict's in Newark, New Jersey. But in those early years, while I'm going to Catholic school during the school year, I would go down south to North Carolina, where my grandmother was a Jehovah's Witness. So the only time I got the Southern Baptist foot stomping, raise the roof, Black Sunday, 9 hours long service was when I went with my paternal grandfather and my Uncle Johnny. They would alternate taking me for a weekend to see the Capehart side of the family. And that's the only time I sort of got the black church experience. So I don't have the relationship with the church the way most black gay folks have with the church. That also might explain why I don't go to church. I'm not. I believe in God, but I'm not. I'm spiritual. I'm not especially religious. So the tension that you're talking about, that I know from talking to other friends, I just don't have that in me. But the one thing I will say is, again, the culture has changed so much that it's even possible for you to ask that question in an open forum like this is an advance. And also, the knowledge that you know there's a tension, and yet you have not, I'm assuming, haven't walked away.
I don't go to church like that anymore.
Oh, anymore. But the point is, the fact that we can have this conversation, and that there are, I'm assuming, but hoping this is true, that there are congregations, black congregations, that are doing the hard work of having these conversations. I'm almost certain that that is happening. So sorry I couldn't answer your question.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
You're welcome.
it.
Thank you.
I think,
Ma'am, your name?
real quick, I think we'll finish up with these three people in line, and then we have one question from somebody watching online, and then we'll do some book signings.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay. I do want to read something before we end the whole thing. Are we on a meter? Do we?
No, you're good.
Okay, good. Okay.
Okay, I'll acknowledge that I haven't read the book yet, but I will. My question for you kind of stems on this, or tags along on this tension issue with journalism under attack and networks not seeming to protect their journalists. How are you holding up and maintaining your integrity in these times?
Well, thank you. Thank you for the question. I am fine. I am fine. I mean, the pressures that the profession is under is actually twofold, and one is has been happening longer than the other. The one that's been happening longer is the pressures on the profession because of technology. The internet, the dawn of the internet, democratized access to information. So information that only I had access to as a journalist, now everybody has access to. People then, as a result, started siloing themselves and getting news they only, catered to them. Audience started leaving, and we as an industry tried to figure out, wait, how do we get you back? We got to do all these things to try to get you back. And then it moved into, okay, well, they're not coming back. Where are they? And then trying to keep up with the technology. So 1 minute it's blogs, then the next minute it's vlogs, then the next minute it's Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok. I stopped at Snapchat. You're lucky I'm on Blue Sky and Threads at this point. But we're moving. We are trying to find where you folks are getting your news, and that's an ongoing challenge. But then the more immediate challenge is the President of the United States. And in the first term, he said, we're the enemy of the people. And we had never heard anything like that before from a President of the United States. That was the first term. This term, he's saying that while at the same time suing journalists, suing news organizations if they say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing from his perspective. And that, I could see how that would have an intimidating effect on people, send a chill through newsrooms and journalists. I mean, I know we are very, very careful at MSNBC and at the Washington Post, but only because we don't want to make a mistake, to give him a reason, an excuse to sue us. That's not out of the order. I mean, that's not extraordinary. I mean, we should be doing that anyway, but when you're dealing with someone who's hyper-litigious, you got to be hyper-vigilant. Now, when it comes to MSNBC, I am lucky to work at a network where everything we do, whether definitely on the news side, in the news programmings from 10 until 4, and definitely during what we call perspective television, opinion television from 4 right through 11, everything we do is grounded in truth, in fact. No matter who is on the air, even if it's an opinion, that opinion is based in reporting. It is based in fact. And so as long as we keep doing that, staying true to our mission as a network, our mission as journalists, you should not have to worry about the news. But you do and should worry about the news that we are covering. And be mindful of distractions. He is a master of distraction. And this is something that we grapple with all the time. Because sometimes the things he throws out there to distract us are outrageous in and of, in their own right, but to distract us from something over here that is equally outrageous. So a big blow up with Elon Musk, a man who has all of our personal data and information that he has hoovered up since January 20th, that's going on over here, and it's looking real bad for the president and the administration. So what happens? National Guard suddenly shows up in Los Angeles, and then Marines. I'm not saying that there's a direct correlation, but it's just the timing is very convenient. So these are perilous times for the country. These are perilous times for the profession. But the one thing I remind people all the time, there is one profession that is protected in the Constitution of the United States, and that is the free press. And that is something journalists take very seriously, especially now.
I'd like
Thank
to
you.
piggyback on that a little bit because I'd like to hear what you thought about for me personally, the House vote to rescind funding for public media.
Well, I mean, it's wrong. The fact that the president wants to do this is not surprising, given that he ran on a bid for, retribution. So, this is what he's going to do. This is what he's doing, and this Congress probably will approve it. If that happens, it is going to be imperative that people who care about public broadcasting, radio and television, public media, the fund drives are, they're persistent, they're annoying, but
KCUR.org/protect.
But it will be vital that everyone dig a little deeper. Because if you care about news and you care about information and you care about the way shows like the NewsHour, how we do the news, it must be supported. Luckily, PBS and NPR, most of their money doesn't come from the federal government, but it's enough that it would hurt if it disappears.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Sir?
Hi, thank you. I hope to see you on the NewsHour tomorrow night.
I'll be there.
Okay, great. I was worried that since you were engaged here, you wouldn't be on the NewsHour. But, whew. So I hope that this isn't redundant given that last amazing question. But you seem to have placed a lot of import on vulnerability with this memoir, and I'm wondering if you're seeing that as kind of the antidote to this moment social politically. Do we need to know our journalists when people are calling for them to be unbiased and saying that they're fake news, or do we not? Are those people not going to be happy regardless? I'm just trying to figure out the why now of this memoir and if this does play a role in everything.
Oh, well, I mean, if it does play a role, it's surely accidental in terms of the timing. I'm an opinion journalist, so I have the privilege of being able to not only report, call up senators, call up governors, talk to people, report, write a column, but then I get to say what I think. I get to say that this person's lying, or this person's a jerk, or this person's a saint, or this issue is a dud, or this issue everyone should rally behind. That is the fun of this job. That is what allows me, I think, to be more open and vulnerable than, say, a Lester Holt, or now Tom Yamas at NBC News, or anyone who is on the news side of the business. Because in order to write the way I wrote in the book, you have to reveal yourself. You have to reveal like what you think about things. And, you know, if I weren't in the jobs that I have now, the kinds of jobs that I have now, where I get to say what I think, this would be a completely different book. Completely. Because I would not feel comfortable being that open and honest and open myself up to any kind of criticism. But, you know, I've been in the public eye now for like a quarter century, so there's nothing anyone can say that will shock or startle me, but I'm used to it. I'm used to it now. I'm used to the brickbats, but I'm also used to being that open and honest in my writing. And also, I am thrilled someone as young as you is watching the NewsHour. Every night.
I'm one of the 70-year-olds that watch the NewsHour.
Wait, you're 70?
One question I want to talk with you about is the difference between print and television. Do you feel that you have more leeway in one versus the other? And I know there's a caveat now because of some of the issues that are going on with the Washington Post. Do you have a better feel for one venue for the other? We have a very small newspaper here now. We still have one, but we do. I'm worried about newspapers. We will always have TV, and TV will reach. Newspapers are what small towns get their information.
And small towns.
Thank you.
I mean, it's wonderful that there's still a paper here. I mean, you're now in the minority. You know, the local media, local newspapers are dying. They're dying, which makes the rescission of funding from NPR really concerning, because that's how people get their news in places where there are no papers.
The people, our listeners that will be most affected are our rural listeners.
I see the nice man in the corner.
You
got
like,
you gotta go. You don't have to go home, but you have to get the hell up out of here. I know that. I know that. So, did you have?
I actually have this question from somebody watching online.
Oh wait, there's an online.
I was speaking up on their behalf.
Chat.
Okay, what's the
Somebody
question?
watching on YouTube would like to know if you have any thoughts on the protests that are happening right now, and specifically any thoughts on the role of the queer population in these protests that are happening.
So the protests that are happening are at once thrilling in that it's the American people being activated to respond to something that's happening in their country, in their community, that they don't like. And there are only a couple ways that the American people can register their displeasure: the ballot box and peaceful protest. And so, you know, it should not be, it is not an accident, and it shouldn't be a surprise that when what happened in Los Angeles sparked protests around the country. And, you know, the role of the queer population in the protests, I mean, come on, queer people have been a part of every protest. It is guaranteed that if you were to survey the people in the protests in Los Angeles and around the country, that a significant chunk of those folks will be LGBTQ.
Exactly.
Well, almost guaranteed. Here's the thing that's concerning about the protests, in that I am worried that an administration that is on a hair trigger will use any provocation to go the next step. In Los Angeles, it was, I guess, a burning Waymo car. I mean, Los Angeles is huge, but you listen to the president and his administration, you would think that those wildfires that were really burning the hell out of Los Angeles were raging again at the hands of protesters, and that just isn't true. And yet, we went from 2,000 National Guard troops to 4,000 National Guard troops, 700 Marines, which I don't understand why more hair isn't on fire that the American military is on the ground in an American city. And so I've heard Governor Newsom say this. I've heard Mayor Bass say this. Just a few hours ago, she had a press conference in Los Angeles. And I am going to say this just as a citizen to everyone in this room and folks watching on YouTube. If you protest, please do so peacefully. Don't get caught up with any knucklehead who decides that, oh, now is my moment to do something stupid. Because it's that thing that the administration they're waiting for it. They are waiting for it. And, the thing that concerns me is we might be too far down the road. We might be. So, yeah, what a downer. But I do have something did you have another question? Because I do.
No,
you don't?
I don't.
A quick reminder for everybody, the books are available for sale back in the lobby. We'll ask that you line up over here for the signing and then cross the stage as opposed to coming up the stairs. And Jonathan, please wrap us up.
There's an order. What I just said is deeply depressing and concerning. But I want to read this. This is the very end of the book. And I want to read it because I want everyone here to leave with at least a modicum of hope from what I'm about to read. So during Trump's first administration, I started writing the early pages of this book, but I also did other things like read. Here's a TBR. David Blight's mammoth biography of Frederick Douglass. And there was an early paragraph in the book that just hit me in a way that I'm not going to give it away. I'll just read you. This is for those of you who have a book, it's page 255. So I am.
As a Catholic reference.
Like many Americans, I was in despair over what was happening to my country, what continues to happen. But in his epic Pulitzer Prize winning biography of Frederick Douglass, Yale history professor David Blight wrote a passage that was simple in its execution, but sweeping in its scope, and gave me the perspective I needed and still rely on to give me the hope that we will get through this. The orator and writer lived to see and interpret Black emancipation, to work actively for women's rights long before they were achieved, to realize the civil rights triumphs and tragedies of Reconstruction, and to witness and contribute to America's economic and international expansion in the Gilded Age. He lived to the age of lynching and Jim Crow laws, when America collapsed into retreat from the very victories and revolutions in race relations he had helped to win. What gave me hope in Blight's words was the sweep of Douglass's life. A man who was born a slave and escaped, who was a celebrated orator against the sin of slavery and saw the end of that evil institution. Douglass played a part in the nation reaching toward its founding ideals during Reconstruction. And then the great man lived long enough to see all the gains he fought for be reversed by Congress, the courts, and the president during the terror of the Jim Crow era. My story is proof that Douglass's fight was not lost, that as bad as things are, they won't stay that way. I am a descendant of slaves whose parents were born and raised in the segregated Jim Crow South. My cousins and I are the first generation in our family who didn't have to pick cotton. My story is the story of an only child mama's boy who had dreams of being a journalist and no roadmap for how to achieve them. I'm a Black man who writes for the Washington Post, anchors a show on MSNBC, and serves as a political analyst on PBS NewsHour. And I am an out gay man who was able to marry the man I love and have the ceremony officiated by the Attorney General of the United States, who made a key determination that made it possible. A more perfect union we do not yet have, But notice how the framers crafted that phrase in the preamble of the Constitution. A more perfect union in and of itself is an aspiration, a destination that is never quite reached. For a perfect union can never be achieved as long as people are left out, are not allowed to fully participate. Through our individual acts and collective action, we, the people, make this a more perfect union. I firmly believe this because my story is a testament to it. Hard work and the gumption to push through doors I never dreamed existed put me on a path to meet people I never should have met in a life that I never should have been able to live. Statistics and popular myths say black boys like me don't reach these heights, and yet here I am.
Thank you, Jonathan Capehart. I'd like to thank the Kansas City Public Library, me personally, my producer, Megan Kiko Anderson, and you all for coming. Thank you. That is going to do it. Thank you, sir, so much. I'm Paul Nyakatura. Please keep listening to KCUR and support, and thank you for your support.